I don't know what is happening. Yeah, the whole of Tarka Sangra, Artha Sangraha in this particular verse. Almost. He summarized everything that was there, but we'll try to move forward. So finally, he mentioned that the Akhyatam Kriya Pradhanam iti vadvihi निरुक्तकारै अपि एतद् एव उक्तं भावार्थक्रियाधिकरणे च तथैव स्थितं. So he's explaining different ways in which what is the Bhavya answer, and that kami, that swarga kama, and that is how you are getting this particular thing. Jyotishthamena swargam bhavay, Jyotishtam namak yag se swarga ko prakti kare. Then he is mentioned yatrapi namadhe ditya sriyate tatrapi अग्निहोत्रम जुहोति. अग्निहोत्र का जाकर वो द्वितीय है. अग्निहोत्रेण नहीं, अग्निहोत्रम जुहोति, वहां पे भी तृतीयार्थ द्वितीयार्थी. अग्निहोत्र नाम के याग से अपना कर्म करे. देवते ही. सो वी हैव डेल्ट विथ इट. तेन सर्वत्र प्रत्यार्थम प्रति धात्वर्थस्य कर्णत्वेन अन्वय नियमः. So yajeta, swarga kama yajeta. What is the dhatu artha? That yaj dhatu. And what is that particular thing? That pratyaya yajeta. So you have to do anvaya. The yaga has some special relationship, and the pratyaya part is more important because that is the one which is pravartanatmaka. That is the one which sort of motivates it. So if someone says padhai, it doesn't mean anything. But when the father says padhai karna chahiye, you should study. That should part is very important. That only gives credence to the advice as to why it's so useful. It gives power of expression to that particular advice. You must study. That must or should. That gives a lot of power to that advice. So yajeta, that is the akhyata. That the akhyatatva and linktva both are there, and that is how it was. A lot of discussion here. That linktva you can have that savati bhavana, and akhyata is the karana there. Ateva guna vishishta dhatvartha vidho. So somena yajeta, somavata yagena yajeta, somena yajata. So guna, what is a guna vidhi? Dadna juhoti, dadhi ke matlab. One is that guna vidhi or anga vidhi is more or less. It's like a small part of it, small component of it. So somena yajeta, if immediately it's mentioned, somena means it's not the name of a soma yaga. Somavata yagena yajeta. धात्वर्थ अनुवादेन केवल गुणविधौ च मत्वर्थलक्षणा विधेर बी प्रकृष्ट विषयत्वं च. What is बी प्रकृष्ट? Immediately it doesn't appear. तथा सोमेन जजेत इति विशिष्ट विधौ. एक विशिष्ट विधि है. सोमेन, सोमवता यागेन, सोमेन जजेत, विशिष्ट विधौ. This is a specific, that visheshan is that soma. Soma thing is becoming the adjective. The yaga is the visheshan. सोमवता यागेन इति दधना जुहोति. दही के द्वारा हवन कर रहा है. ज्योति इति गुण विधौ दधिमत्ता होमेन इति. दही के साथ होम करे, दही का उपयोग करके होम करे, तब इंद्र जी खुश होते हैं. नाउ व्हाट इज दैट बी प्रकृष्ट विषयत्वम? Because that immediately doesn't appear, so it becomes a little distance. Then what is namadhya? Sometimes guna vidhi also we are mentioning. Dahi ke madhyam se याग करे, सोमवता यागेन स्वर्गम भावयते. ऐसे तो अर्थ कर सकते हैं. दूसरा है, sometimes there is something called a name. Okay. Now udvida yajeta pasukama. Udvid means what? Udvid is plants. It can also be kudal and all, to extract soil. Now khanti, stuff like this. Now do you sacrifice these instruments for digging earth in the yaga udvida? Because there is a tritiya suti, there is a tritiya vibhakti over. No, that is the name of a yaga. There is a lot of discussion in the the Mimamsa text. नामधेयान्वय, नामधेय के साथ उसका अन्वय करने पर वी शुड डिराइव द मीनिंग. तो समान अधिकरण्यो उपपत्ति है धात्वर्थ मात्र विधानाच न मत्वर्थ लक्षणा न वा विधि विप्रकृष्ट विप्रकर्षः. Now, if there is, he'll explain, he'll give the example and we'll understand it. So, tadevam jyotishthamena yajeta swargakama. Let us take one vidhi vakya. ज्योतिष्टम याग के माध्यम से स्वर्ग जाने वाला आदमी, इच्छुक आदमी याग करे. Yotistomena yajeta. Now, Jyotishtama in itself, does it mean anything? What is the meaning of Jyotishtama? It's a name only, no? Mickey Mouse, it doesn't mean anything. It's a little girl. You are calling her Mickey Mouse out of fun or just to tease her or something. The significance of the word Mickey Mouse lies in a very bubbly, naughty, playful, cute girl, little girl. That word you're using, Mickey or something to her. That is the artha. Similarly, when you say Jyotishthamena yajeta, Jyotishtama means yaga only. Jyotishtama doesn't have any separate, so there is no separate artha for that. Okay, so Jyotishthamena yajeta swargakama iti atra akhyat artha, that yajeta, akhyat artha bhavet. What is that? That yaga. Okay, that for yagena akhyat artha bhavet. इति किम आकांक्षा किम यागेन भावे, कौन सा याग में स्वर्ग पाए. कमी विषयम, दैट स्वर्ग काम, कौन से याग, कौन से योग याग करें, कौन सा नाम का याग करें, स्वर्गम. देन और कौन करें, स्वर्ग जानने के लिए ज्योतिष्टम नामक याग करें. स्वर्गम इति विधि श्रुते बलियस्वाद आकांक्षायाम उत्कटत्वाच्च. So this is basically he's trying to say that in case of Namadhya, when that Yotishtama Savada, there is another word which comes into that particular injunction. If it is referring to the name of that particular Kriya, then there is a different way to make sense of it. It's not relevant to us, but he's giving his wisdom on how Vedic injunctions are interpreted. Tataha, Kena iti apekshite, if somebody says, but how to do it? With what? Kena bhavet. Kim bhavet? That yagam bhavet. Kena swargam bhavet. Kena bhavet, yagena bhavet. Katham bhavet, then he will say Jyotishtama and all the details will come. Yagena. Kena bhavet, yagena. Iti trutiyanta pada samanadhikaranatvat karnatvena eva अन्वय नियमाच. कर्णत्वेन सोम, that is agnishtoma yagena, agnistomena yagena. There is a samanadhikaran, both are in tritiya vibhakti. Jyotishtam, with the help of Jyotishtam, which is the name of a yaga, but in Sanskrit Jyotishtamena yagena, that you do swargam bhavat. Kena yagena Jyotishtamena yagena, that is the answer. So there is an equivalence between Jyotishtama and a yaga, that is Samanadhikaranya. They are at the same place. Number two, that this particular Jyotishtama yaga becomes then Karana for that Swarga Phala Prapti. किंग नामना इति अपेक्षिते, कौन सा नाम है वो याग का, ज्योतिष्टमेन इति तन्नामा इत्यर्थः. कौन से याग करें, ज्योतिष्टम नाम का याग करें. शब्दात अनुपस्थितोपि, इफ यू जस्ट मेंशन ज्योतिष्टम, does anything appear in your mind? No. So we ज्योतिष्टम शब्दो भासते एव सावदे बोधे श्रवणेन उपस्थितः तात्पर्य वसात. Now, the moment you say Jyotishtama, it doesn't make any sense. However, Jyotishtama word registers in your mind through the Shravana Indriya. You hear it, you register something. Then you are doing that Anvaya. Jyotishtama is the name of a yaga, and that is how it makes sense to you. Namadheya Anvaya cha na vivakti artho dwaram nai ivadi artha anvaya iva. He's giving another extra example. And this is because he's such a great scholar, so he's giving a lot of. So whenever you have namadheya, okay, so vibhakti is not important there. It is only that equivalence which is important. Samanadhikaranya. Jyotishtama is the name of a yaga. Jyotishtomena, does it mean that this is a Jyotishtama is actually a guna or something? No. The vibhakti thing is absolutely irrelevant. He's explaining how, in case of a name, these are not relevant. He's going to give Couple of examples here. Now, what is the example? So, for example, uh, Chandra eva mukham. Chandra eva mukham. This girl's face is like the moon. She has a very beautiful face, a little girl. So you're saying ghato nasti. There is no ghata. Ghata nasti. That na pratyay is that na asti. Ghato nasti. That na is a obvious. There is no change in it. घट नहीं है घर पर साहब नहीं है that nahi there is no change in it. It's just expressing the way in Abhyay there is no change. Similarly, chand jaisa chehra, and your face is like a moon. If somebody says that Eva doesn't undergo any changes, chand jaisa, that jaisa remains there. There is no vibhakti, there is no change in mood of that. Similarly, the namadhya is not vibhakti artho dwaram. So you cannot try to make sense of it by looking at it whether it's tritiya vibhakti or fifth vibhakti. This is for the consumption of experts working on Mimamsa. I just mentioned it. तेन मत्वर्थ लक्षणाम अंतरेण एव ज्योतिष्टम शब्द बता इति अन्वय लाभः. So मत्वर्थ iti anvaya lahavah. So that matvartha lakshanam antarene eva. That is something called matvartha lakshana. What is somena jajeta? Somavata yagena jajeta. That matvartha is jaganya vriti. सोम नामक याग के माध्यम से स्वर्ग पाने का इच्छा करे. सोमवता यागेन. Soma here becomes that gunaviti, as we mentioned, one small part of a big yaga. Okay, whereas Jyotishthamena Yajeta Swarakama, Jyotishtama is a namadhya, its name, its title of a particular kriya. It is not part of it. So that Tritiya Vibhakti, the mood, the third case that we are mentioning, that is not very important. He's saying, like for example, you say her face is like the moon, that Abhyaya, there is no change in it. So Abhyaya, and therefore if you say that chand jaisa chehra, or if you say another thing, another example, what did he give? That ghoto nasti, the person is not there at home. That not, it doesn't undergo any changes, right? It just stays there. Similarly, the title of something, even though vibhakti or something may be there, you don't have to stress the meaning to make sense of it by bringing that into discussion. Okay. Now, tathacha kavi prayogaha. Himalayo nama nagadhirajaha. What is this nagadhiraja? A lot of people pronounce it as nagadhiraja. Himalayo nama nagadhirajaha. Naga. Ga is, gachati. So ga, naga, it doesn't move. It's achala. Therefore, mountains are nagas. Even trees are referred to as naga because they can't walk around. So it is said that if a person is very rude and cruel to other people, he is reborn as a tree. Why other people can cut you, you cannot speak a word because you have already done a lot of violence during this birth. Anyways, coming back to it, Himalayo Nama Nagadhi Rajaha. Now, when you say Himalaya, Nam Nagadhi Raj hai, पर्वतों का राजा है. Do you say Himalaya Namavan Nagadhi Raja? We don't say this. That is inferred very quickly. So Vattu Pratyaya is not there. No Matvartha Lakshana is done. That Mattu Pratyaya Van, that Vattu Pratyaya is not required. Himalaya Namavan Ityartha. Evam Iha, same way, Prabhinna Kamalodare Madhuni Madhukaraha Pivati. That Prabhinna Kamalodare, so there is Madhuni, honey, Madhukaraha, that honeybee is drinking in Kamalo Dare. So that particular, drinks from that, the scent part of that lotus flower. Now here Madhukaraha. Do you analyze too much as to what it means? No, it's just a name. It makes absolute sense quickly. Ityadav agruhita sangatika ekapadavati vakye madhukaradi padam swarupena eva bhasate. Directly you make sense of it. You don't try to analyze it anymore. Namadheya न अर्थम उपस्थापयति प्राग अगृहीत संगतिकत्वात्. In case of namadheya, there is another way of making sense by doing this samanadhikaranya blah blah, but he's saying that they are not through vibhakti dwara. That is the simple point. He's saying that you don't have to overanalyze. There is a difference between somavata yagena swargam bhavayet Jyotishthamena, Jyotishthamena, Yajeta Swargakamaha. The only difference is they are Somavata, Somena Jajeta, means that you are using that soma for a guna vidhi, dadhna jyoti itivat. Here, when you say jyotishthomena swarga kama jajeta, it is not referring to any guna or any particular karana, directly referring to the title of that kriya. Tad ayam vakyartha jyotishtama namna yagena swargam ishtam bhavayet. ज्योतिष्टाम स्टोम नामक याग के सहायता से स्वर्ग नामक इष्ट फल को प्राप्त करे भावयत, उसको तैयार करें. कथम यदि अपेक्षिते कैसे करे, श्रुति लिंग वाक्य प्रकरण स्थान समाख्या भी. Now he's saying how to make sense of इति कर्तव्यता. कथम भावित कैसे करें, कौन से अंग के बाद कौन सा होगा, ऋतु कितने हुए, होता कौन होगा, उद्गाता कौन होगा, ब्रह्मा कौन होगा. होता है जो ऋग्वेद का पृष्ठ होता है. Udgatri, that is Samaveda, Adharyu, Yajurveda, and what in Brahma is Atharva Veda. And there is a Brahma who doesn't speak anything, he'll just quietly sit. Any faults, he'll point. He's a referee of this whole thing. Okay? Now, this whole yaga, and there is a Yajamana. So, these are the 5 people minimum required for many of these yagas that are organized. Very complicated. Okay? And there are several other people who will be there with them. Now, so there is this whole hermeneutic science here, how to make sense of the Angavidis, which one will follow what. Iti kartavya, that katham bhavit, kaise kare. Then you have to study Vedas applying this. And I will just briefly mention one by one because we will anyway bring this discussion to an end today. Shruti is directly whatever is Swatantra Ravaha Shruti, directly is mentioned in Shruti. It's not depending on anything else. There's a Veda Vakya. So there is no confusion. Directly follow it. Shruti Vakya is not clear, or you are not getting a very clear message. The law is not clear. Then where do you have to go? You have to go to the rules. You have to go make interpretation what the law can signify. Then that is lingam. What is linga? Sabda samarthyam. Very briefly, what is the meaning of that word? Linga is rudha, not yogika savada. There is a difference. Pankaja, if it means lotus, that is rudha artha. Pankaja pankajataha, it has come out of kichad, it come out of mud, and therefore its name is Pankaj. That is yogika sabda. That will be the last thing. If you want to interpret any word like that. So linga, sabda samarthyam. Then what you would look at, what does it mean? Why it's mentioned? Vakya, samavyavaharo vakya. Simultaneously, they are ucharita, they are pronounced at one time. So that's why it's called Vakya. That what is the total Vakya? That Paddo Samuha, try to make sense of it. And then he will go further. Prakarana. Prakarana is what? Upakari, Upakaraka. Ubhaya, Parashpara, Akanksha. There are 2-3 sentences. You will see whether it logically makes any sentence. Logically makes in sense that this follows that, and therefore I can say that this particular action will follow this. Can I interpret like that? So that is what is Prakarana. Context. Sthana. Sthana is Desa Samanya. Where is it mentioned? No, it is not mentioned here. Now there is a particular yaga. There is after this there is a word that you have to do this particular karma. In another case, there is something called Prakriti yaga and Vikriti yaga. We'll also go there. So you'll say, okay, Prakriti में जैसा लिखा है विकृति में ऐसे ही होगा. Okay, then we'll go there. So that is sthana, and sthana also there are 2 kinds. One is pathakrama, then one is arthakrama. So if you read Vedas, how does it come? That is pathakrama. Then arthakrama is more powerful because logically does it follow? It may have been mentioned first, but actually it's supposed to be done at the end of the yaga. So arthakrama, you have to see, does it make any sense? Then you have to see and decide the sequence, that is arthakrama and pathakrama. That is sthana, and samakhya is yogika savada. So all this will take a few classes, at least 10-20 classes in Mimamsa Darsana to make a sense of each and every one. That is one particular way to make sense of any Vedic injunction. Now we're talking about the Vedic science of language. And next, there is something called which one to do when, any particular sub-activities. So there is a word called samavai, samavaika arad upakaraka angagrama puryeti. So now what is samavaya and arad upakaraka? What is, I mean, in very brief language, one is sannipatti upakaraka, another is arad upakaraka. Now what is sannipatti upakaraka? You are making kheer, okay? So you are putting milk and you put rice and then you'll put sugar, or you'll put for some dry fruits and few spices. then you put milk, and then you put sugar, and then you rice, and then you stir it, and then after some time the that particular porridge, milk, whatever dessert is ready, right? That is aradupakaraka, is sugar. It has to be there, and then you use it. Then you are making those. Uh, you will cook something else after that. So while you are doing this, you will make a tomato chutney. Okay. So while you are preparing this, you also put some sugar that you have mentioned, that sira or whatever, that you put this and you mix that with some tamarind or something and put it in a corner. You want to mix that later on when you make that tomato chutney. Now, this additional spicy and condiments that you're putting together to be inserted into the tomato chutney, that is aradupakaraka. That means it's going to be useful later on. Immediately not required. It will be useful later on. That is aradupakaraka. Sannipatya upakaraka, immediately relevant. That is all. And there will be a lot of discussion on all that. Vikrito prakritivat iti upabandhena. Prakritivat vikriti kartavya. So that is a particular thing, that vikriti yaga. There is a prakriti, that first yaga. As a sub-component of that, there will be many follow-up yagas. Now, how to follow the sequence? What kind of karmas to do? He'll say, follow the main yaga. This is one component of it. So whatever is done there, you have to do it. There are certain things will not be repeated here. So there is some signs that prakriti vikriti samandha. Okay. So then prakriti, and then vikruto, then nitya yatha sakti iti upabandhena. In case you are doing nitya karma, sandhya vandanam in the morning, you will do agnihotra, daily puja you are doing, or surjopasthana, you are doing some puja, offering water, tarpana. How to do nitya karma? Should you do all shodosopachara puja every day? Do you do it? No. What do? You light a lamp, maybe panchopachara, you do a bit of argyam, and then you say asana, and then argyam, and then deepa, dhupa, and naivedyam, pushpa, chandana, of course. Then you just whatever minimum, right? You asana and arghya, then you offer that snana, then chandana, pushpa, deepa, dhupa, and whatever. And if you're in a very hurry, you light a lamp, directly you do naivedya, you have a meeting, so you rush. So he's saying, yathasakati upabandhena, how much you can do that much. Because there is no phala in Nitya Karmas. Nitya Karmas is for Antakarna Suddhi. If you don't do it, there is punishment. So do it. The basic minimum you have to do. Mukhya labhe pratinidhaya apiti. And then, for example, you are to suppose Bastra Danam in puja. What they do? Bastrarthe Sutram. So you don't have, so they have this red thread, right? It's like this red threads. They split it and make small thing. Bastram Dadami, that's not Bastram. So if the Mukhya is not there, you do Pratinidhi. There's a particular, like gold is required. Okay, you put a small thing. Bhumi Danam, you just give a bit of soil. Go Danam, you don't have. Okay, just give something. Just they give a bit of cow dung, saying Go Danam. It's symbolic, because actually these are Nitya Karmas. Mukhya Labhe Pratinidhaya Api Yavan Nyaya Labhyam, jitne kar sakte hain tatpuranam. That's how we finish the karma. Evam cha yagasya swargavachinna bhavana karanatvena. That yaga is swargavachinna ishta sadhana. And then you are doing vachinna karanatvena. This is a means to their swarga karanatvam. That yaga becomes swarga. That means to reaching heaven. Karnatvena cha sakshat kratri vyapara vishya swarupam. Vishayatva rupam. And because it's a means, then it becomes the business of what? Because that karta, he's so sharp, Madhusudana Saraswati. After giving a long lecture, he's bringing everything down to that particular verse of Bhagavan in verse number 18. What did Bhagavan had said? He said, we have been doing a lot of this Mimamsa philosophy, so lest we have forgotten that particular verse. Jnanam gyam parigyata trividha karma chodana karanam karma kartiti. So karanam, that karma is swarga. Karanam is that yaga, karta. That is a pravartaka who will do this nivartaka. Trividha karma sangrahan, that he's bringing back everything, the whole Mimamsa discussed into this. Evamsa yagasa swarva avachina bhavana karanatvena swarga karanatvam, and swarga karanattvena cha साक्षात कर्तृ व्यापार विषयत्वम. जो करता है उसका व्यापार का वो विषय होता है. That is the विषय वस्तु, that is the subject of it. And that is right? And that yaga, and then what happens? Kriti sadhyatvam. कृति साध्यतम श्रुत्यार्थाभ्याम लभ्यते इति तद उभयोपि न लिंगादि पदवाच्यम अप्राते शास्त्रम अर्थवदिति न्याय. And now there are certain people who are trying to argue that these yaga, that lingadi yajeta, they symbolize two things at the same time. And what do they symbolize? Kriti sadhyatva, ishta sadhanatva, he's refusing because he has already mentioned, Kumarila Bhatta has mentioned that prerana. Yajeta means that is preranatmaka. Karna chahiye. That motivation is giving. Don't mention ऐसे करने से ऐसे हो जाएगा, विधिर विधायकः, उसी से ही विधान हो जाएगा, as the न्यायिक say. He's refusing all that. लभ्यते इति तदुभयमपि न लिंगादि पदवाच्यम अप्राप्त शास्त्रम अर्थवद. जो नहीं है, अप्राप्त अर्थ को जो विधान करता है उसी को शास्त्र कहते हैं. For example, if you are feeling very cold, you will use a blanket. Okay. Now in Veda, should there be a mention that you should wear blankets or you should wrap yourself with blanket in winter? No, it will not be mentioned. Why? Everybody knows about it. So there's something called bhutarthavada. So on apravte shastram arthavadeti. If that particular artha is not available, nor it is advised, then the shastra advises, then it has some artha, there is some significance. We should talk nicely with people. Yeah, it's a normal Laukika thing. Veda will not waste time talking about it. Yeah, it will say what to do, and this Smritis might say Veda will not waste time. Veda doesn't deal with these kind of Laukika things. Whatever is normally deducible or you can follow and you can decide, Vedas don't get rid. It's not aprapta. Ragatha prapta. People love to eat. Should Veda prescribe that you try to have sweets in the morning? There's no need. Ragatha prapta. As such, you would like to have it. Okay? So Veda doesn't get into this, and therefore he's saying that ishti, that kriti sadhyatvam, that is the goal of your efforts to reach heaven. That is not the artha here. Ananvayat cha ishta sadhanam iti samase gunabhutam ishta padam swarga kama iti samasantara gunabhutiyena swargapadiyena katham anvayat Ishta Swarga Sadhanamiti. Now he's getting into again a bit of linguistic science here. Swarga Kama Yajeta. Now, if you try to interpret very simplistic translation of what he's trying to say, that this Swarga is the Ishta Sadhana, that Ishta Sadhanata, that Swarga, and this Yaga is the Ishta Sadhana. Okay. Now Swarga Kama you are saying. So if you say this, there is a problem. Because Swarga is the Ishta thing, okay? And that is the Ishta thing. And then the Yaga, Swargam, Yajeta, and you cannot have a Anvaya between what is Guna and there is some other word, okay? So Guna Bhutam Ishtapadam, Swarga Kama. जो स्वर्ग को चाहता है, यहाँ पे स्वर्ग क्या है? It's a guna, it's a visheshana. Right? It's an adjective of a person with that desire. That desire he has. What desire he has? He wants to go to heaven. And then Swargapadena. And then Swargapada Katham Anvitat. And then he's saying that this, if you immediately try to twist it and saying that this is also Ishta, that Ishtam Bhavet, Swargam Bhavet. So he's saying that it cannot be, you cannot have Swarga Kama and then that you try to Ishtam Bhavet. That is not a perfect equation between those two. He has mentioned it here. Given 1 second, the example he has mentioned is what is the problem he's mentioning here? Yeah. Yes. So if you say Ishta Sadhanam, that Ishta becomes the Visheshana in the Samastavada, that total word. Then if you say Swarga Kamaha, the Swarga is the Visheshana or the adjective of the person who is desiring to go to the Swarga. Now you are trying to equate Ishta Sadhanam Swarga Kamaha. There is no equivalence. Why? Ishta Sadhanam is a different word, Swarga Kama is a different word. Ishta is Swarga. You cannot have that kind of a rule. Why? He's saying that you cannot take one aspect of one word and try to relate it to another word. So one sabdartha, another sabdartha, you can establish a relationship. You cannot take one aspect or one component of one word, samasti vachaka sabda, and then establish a equation between these two. And he's saying that there is some kind of a problem there. Okay? Because he will mention that there. So he's saying, what is this? Is a very standard thing. Nahi Raja Purusho Veeraputra ityatra. Raja Purusha Veeraputraha. Now, Raja is Veera. Can you say this? Raja Purushaha Veeraputraha. Son of a brave person. Veeraputraha Raja Purushaha. Ityatra Veerapada Raja Padayor Anvaya Asti. Padarthaha. Padarthena Padartha Padarthena Anveti. Na to Padartha Ekadesena iti Nyayat. There is a rule. पदार्थ जो है पद का जो अर्थ है और एक पद का अर्थ के साथ ही उसका अन्वय होगा ना कि उसका एक देश को ले लें हम जैसे राज पुरुष एंड वीर पुत्र यू आर ट्राइंग टू एस्टैब्लिश सम relationship and you are trying to say वीर पद राज पदयोर no you cannot have that kind of an equation you don't try to do that that is not acceptable so that is how he is refuting the nyayikas not a problem karna vibhakti Vivaktyanta Jyotishthomadina. So when you say Jyotishthomenas, Swarga Kama Yajeta. Namadheya Anvaya Prasangadi Doshascha Asvini Pakhye Drashtabhya. And all these problems that we discuss, if you try to analyze this in case of Jyotishtoma, the Namadheya, these problems will reappear, which we just discussed. एतेन इष्ट साधनत्वम अनिष्ट साधनत्वम कृति साध्यत्वम इति त्रयमपि विध्यर्थ इति अपास्थम इससे वो कह रहे हैं कि विधि का अर्थ क्या है अदर पीपल आर ट्राइंग टू आर्ग्यू दैट लेट अस एक्सेप्ट दैट विधि स्वर्ग काम यजेत स्वर्ग काम जो कर रहा है जो स्वर्ग काम है स्वर्ग का कामना जिसमें है वो याग करना चाहिए ये वाक्य में तीन चीज दिखाई देता है अन्य लोगों को क्या क्या वन इज दैट इष्ट साधनत्व जो चाहते हो मिल जाएगा अनिष्ट असाधनत्व जो अनिष्ट है वो नहीं करेगा और कृति साध्यत्व आपसे वो हो पाएगा आपका जो आचरण है आपका जो प्रयास है उसका साध्य वही है साधारण तो लग रहा है बोला इति अपास्तम नो दीज आर ऑल not the meaning of that vidhi sabda. That is the Nyayikas are saying he's refusing it. Ati Gaurava, this is too much of imagination. Arthavadanam sarvatha vaithya and then he's saying these are stuti paraka, but you cannot take them too seriously. Ateva kruti sadhyatva matram vidyartha ityapi na bhavana karanattvena Arthalabhyatvad iti uktehe. And there are certain other people who also would like to argue Kruti Sadhyatva Matram that this is Ratna Koshakara. There is some author and he has given this that Kriti Sadhyatva le lo. आपका जो प्रयास है उसका साध्य है that is the goal of your efforts that vidyartha swarga kama yajeta is saying no we cannot take it that also is refuted then alokika niyogastu Alaukikatvadeva na vidyartha. And there is a great person called Prabhakara. There is a Bhatta and Prabhakara, two schools in Mimamsa. Bhatta was the Guru, Prabhakara was the Sishya, but he refuted his Guru. And this Bhatta, Prabhakara Mata is also refuted. Alaukika Niyoga. He's saying there is a special way in which you are moved to do this. And he's saying no, that is refuted. That cannot be accepted. Okay. Apurva Karya Niyoga, that is the Linga Artha. He said, no, that also cannot be. Parakrantam Chatra Survi, this view has been refused by all the great scholars of Vyakarana and Mimamsa. And but I'm not getting into it because we have to finish it anyways today. Tasmad Ananya Labhya Lagutamacha Prerna Eva Lingadi Padavachya iti sthitam. So he then concludes this long discussion after so much of hair splitting and analyzing. He's saying any vidhi that is mentioned is finally pointing at one thing, prerana. It moves you to do it. It motivates you. It directs you. It advises you. That's it. Pravartakam to jnana. Why is he mentioned that? Because that that in the first verse, let's go back to the verse. What did he say there? In verse number 18, in the introduction and later on, also he mentioned jnanam jnayam parijnata. Okay, first you need that jnana, and then jnaya. What do you want to? And parijnata. You are the knower, the person who will do this nivartaka. Therefore, that he is concluding here. So Vakya, then Pravartakam tum Pravartakam. What is that Pravartaka? Is that Jnana is Pravartaka. That's Shruti Vakya. Pravartakam tu Jnanam Vakyartha Maryada Labhyam Anyad Eva Sarvisam Api Vadinam. That Vakyartha, whatever appears out of that Vakya which is mentioned in the Vedic injunction, that Jnana, that particular understanding of this, that Savdi Bhavana becomes the mover, that induces you to take up this. Then you have Arti Bhavana, and then you try to explore how to do it and you will commit it. Akyatartha eva viseshyataya bhasate. Akyatartha is that ta, yajje ta, yaga karna chahiye, that part ta, that vidling lakara. And there is a akyatatva and lingtva. Lingtva is Savdi Bhavana, akyatatva is the karana. आख्यातार्थ एव च विशिष्यतया भासते न धात्वर्थ. धात्वर्थ is what? That yaja. No, that is not. च न नामार्थ स्वर्ग काम वा इति च ukta prayam eva. Similarly, na nam artha like jyotishtom or anything, that is also not important. Okay. Tena cha yaganukala kruti mana swarga kama. The Nyayika philosophers interpret that याग के अनुकूल जो प्रयास है उसको करने वाला आदमी का नाम स्वर्ग काम है. वो कर्ता में ले जाते हैं. अन्वय. अन्वय is, analyzing, making sense of any sentence. They will try to ultimately explain it in the light of that particular agency. This is refuted. So he's saying Tarkika Matam Purusha Vishesyaga Vakyartha Jnanam Apastam. That it is specific to that particular Purusha. We are not interested. As such, the Vedas are Apurusha. Who will do it depends on whosoever is interested. Veda is not interested. It's not having any particular person in mind. Then there is a general advisory. There are special advisories. If you understand them, there is a whole science of how to make sense of them. You do it. Then again, he will say that the vidhis are not mandatory for all because people are there at different levels of their spiritual evolution. So some people may be interested in Swarga, some people may like to do only Nitya Karma for Antakarana Suddhi so that they can have Vairagya, Antakarana Suddhi and Jnana Abhyasa Ichha. That is how he concludes the whole long discussion saying Sankhepena Matam Bhattam Idam Atra Upapaditam. Bhattam Idam, Kumarila Bhatta, the Mimamsakara, his view I'm accepting that Vidhi means Prerana. Yad Vaktavyam Iha Anyat Tad. Whatever I've said other than this Bhattamata, whatever, Anyat Anusindhyam Akarat. It is just as a kind of research, as matters of exploration. I absolutely do not disagree with whatever Kumarila Bhatta has said. Everything else is kind of secondary to my discussion. Okay, that is how we started with a long discussion, and the end of the day, he was only trying to explain Jnanam Gyam Parijnata Trividha Karma Chodana. That is the main thing. That and karma chodana, that chodana is that particular vidhi, that whatever, and that and this parijnata is the person who will do it, and jnana is that jnayata anena, that karana. You see that akhya. And gyam, what do you want to do? Samanyaneva jnatavyam, that jnatavya padartha, and karanam karma karta. These explaining the signs of karma. And therefore, the whole karma kanda science will come into picture. Shastriya karmas will require a clear understanding of the injunctions in the Vedas and how to make sense of them and how to apply them. Because Bhagavan is saying this, whatever he says cannot contradict the signs of injunctions. and the linguistic analysis thereof provided in the Mimamsa Darshana, because Bhagavan cannot go against the Vedas, because Vedas are end of the day what? They are Nitya and they are Nishwasita, Mukha Nishwasita. It's not like he's composing it. He's making a plan and he's composing. No, because it's not Purusha and Bhagavan has not said, there is no Bhagavan to tell Veda. Mukha Nishruta word is there, but this is it's like breathing, because that those truths are all the time there. That is what they say. So it's Apurusha, but in order to make sense of these small words, Jnanam, Gyam, Parigyata, Trividha, Karma, Chodana. So far, you want to understand the injunctions. There is a Jnana part, there is a Gyam part, what you need to know, and who is to know, and what he will do. These are three aspects. And Karanam, Karma, Karta. Swarga, Kamaha, Yotishtumena, Swarga, Kamaha, Yajeta. So, in that Karanam and that Karma, that particular thing, what is the goal? Karma is actually the objective. Karma is not Kriya. Karanam is that yaga, karma is swarga prapti, and that karta, who will do it, yaga, yajaman, who wants to do it, the trividaha karma sangraha. In order to explain only this much, he went on and on and on, and he dealt with virtually, gave us a crash course in Tattva Sangraha, and I'm thinking at some point of time, we can look at Mimamsa Paribhasa. It's a small, beautiful Ramakrishna Mission has published it, but it gives us the nomenclature of different words in Mimamsa which are there, and some introduction to the Vedic literature. Okay, so we are done with the verse number 18, and I don't want to push it further. And there is so much of other theories which he has mentioned, even about grammarians in the notes, and how they refuse to accept the view of the Nyayikas, but we need not digress further. So we will start from the verse number 19, and the rest of it will flow much easily. So for the day, we are done with this tiring part of understanding and discussing this Mimamsa thing. That has come to a close, so we'll hold it here. We'll start from the rest of it tomorrow, the verse 19. Any questions any of you have, or we can do this Antimakta?
Swamiji, I don't know, I'm yet to get a feel of that. Why Mimamsa